I'm getting better at it. It's good. Okay. So I sent this link into your Discord chat, so you should already have the sort of link to it. It's just in the workshops folder for this module. So you have 2 learning objectives. Our learning objectives to focus on this morning are to test application behavior that consumes data from an API. Now, this language of consuming data is quite common because when we make a request, it gives us data, and then we have to find a way to manipulate it. So consuming data is that act of taking data and then manipulating it. And that's what we'll have to do is we take the sort of response from any API, and then we extract things that we need from it. And that's the process of consuming data. Explain how to test application behavior that consumes data from an API, and then we're actually going to test drive it. So then just make sure that you're able to explain it at the same time as do it. Those are the 2 main things that we're going to focus on this morning. So we'll have a quick thumbs check at the end of it, just making sure we have some confidence, better confidence on these 2 objectives. So before we have a look at this sort of in depth, I'm going to switch back to the Miro board. And I wanted to, well, okay, now let's pause. I don't have my iPad. All right, hold on. Feel free to chat amongst yourselves while I go get my tools.
How is everyone?
Ten out of 10. How about yourself?
Oh, it's a bit early.
I think I'll be 10 out of 10 at 6 p.m.
Yeah, sounds about right. Looking forward to this weekend.
Yep.
Okay. I left it in the car, so there we are. At least I managed to get outside today. That's a bonus. We all still here? No one's fled the scene? A couple thumbs up. That's good. Okay, so what was I? Someone remind me. What was I doing? Does anyone know? No, yeah, half the time I don't, it's fine. Okay, so let's have a look. What are we doing? What are we doing? Learning objectives, what did I say? There was a digression I was about to make, and that caused me to go get my iPad to do this. Oh, okay. Well, clearly none of you knew because I hadn't even said it yet, had I? Okay, so API requests. So we take this domain model at the moment. It's a very simple one, as models are. They try to reduce complexity to demonstrate one or two things. And this one is trying to represent sort of the difference between page views. The first one is when you open up a browser, you visit a certain URL, and that denotion here of just the / indicates like the root of the application. So for example, if it was with mirror.com, the index, which is that / would simply be everything up until like that point here. That's the sort of the index of mirror.com, right? The project index. So commonly you'll see the index of a project literally with an index. You might have seen if you use HTTP server with all the different files and folders that are available at that root. So an index would be so the root of a project which has the different files and folders that are available to you. That's called the index, and commonly you'll see files named index and then an extension like index.html or index.js, and those are the files that you would expect to be served at that root. So when I say visits the index, I want to be able to see this text on the page. Now, in order to get here, there's something that has to happen. We have to load some, lock it down, and we have to make a request to get the temperature information in this part here. To the weather API. Okay, there's probably a bunch of different APIs that give weather data. We're going to use one from the Open Weather API. APIs, the way to think about an API is an interface, as an API is a very generic way to describe any kind of interface. You can have an API to your sort of objects, to your classes, to a system. API is a very general way to describe what is the interface. How do I interact with this system? And so when we think about APIs, capital API, and this is how do I interact with the data from Open Weather? And you can think of an API as essentially like a barrier between their data store. They have a bunch of data about weather, and we want access to it, right? We're the user over here. And we want to be able to access their data. And so what they've kindly done, the folks over at Open Weather, is they've exposed their data store to us. Not directly, but in a very defined way. And they defined it according to different endpoints. You can call it different endpoints, or also you can call it different URLs. So in our current example, if we wanted to have a look at the current weather, and this is, they have a few different endpoints. We can have a look actually at their different endpoints, and here are the different endpoints they have. You can get current weather data, you can get hourly forecast, 4 days data, all these different endpoints they have available to you. So in order to understand how to use it, you have a look at the documentation. For example, they give you an example query that you can make with more information about the different parameters, and there'll hopefully be at some point some example responses. But if not, we can, are there any examples? Yeah, there are right here. Example of a response. So this is the data you get back, and we'll have a look at it ourselves. Now, hold on, let's go stay back there. Where is it here? So I want some data. I need to figure out which data store that I want? Does it have an API? If so, I'm in business, yay. Then I can think about, okay, what specific data do I want? Do they have an available endpoint for me to use? Then I go look up the documentation. And this endpoint, you can think of it as essentially like little entryways into the data store. However many endpoints they have, they define it. You can only get information by using these specific endpoints. Right? And this is the responsibility of the open weather people to define this interface. So you don't just have access to the data store. The data store is hidden behind an interface that you have to be able to understand how to read and use. And there are some conventions to writing APIs and conventions to documenting them. So where am I going with this? Okay, so yeah, then we make a request, and we'll have a look at a request in a second. We have a lot of different ways we can make a request, and then we have to look at the response. So for the most part, we'll be using APIs that respond with the format called JSON. Most at the moment, you experience responses being delivered in HTML. All right, these are formats for it's all just text. All right, whenever anyone talks to you about responses, it's all just characters and text that are in different formats. When you send a request, it's text. When you get a response back, it's all text. Just text and agreed formats. So when we get the response back from this API call, it's decided to use this format. And this is a convention. People have decided that JSON is a good format to use for data. It's simple, it's effective, it's cross language, so you can lots of different languages can manipulate it. So it's useful. And this is the format that we're expecting. There's a couple other formats you might be aware of. The most common three are these three. Browsers can render this, as we know. It's quite nice and easy for browsers to render HTML, but they don't render JSON. It's just text that they display. Okay, so we get back JSON. JSON is a format of data. And let's have a look at an example a request and an example response. So in order to make a request, let's have a look at the documentation. I really dislike the zoom overlay. Okay, I want to make an example request, so I want to go back up to the top here and have a look at how to make this request. It says I need to use this URL and append a query string. A query string is anything after the question mark that has a set of key value pairs. And this looks like it has a Q parameter, and down here it explains what it is. It's required. It's the city name, state code, and country code divided by comma. Use specific country codes. And app ID equals API key. Okay, so I need to get my API key. Where do I get my API key? Probably over here somewhere. API keys over here. Okay, that's the same place. Good. This is my API key. Nice. Screenshot it, folks, so you can play around with my API key. Okay. Let's have a look at an example query. So curl is a command line client, so I can make requests using curl. There's a bunch of documentation for it, but as long as you're using some kind of bash, you should be able to use curl regardless of whether you're on Mac OS or on Windows. So for example, I could send a request to, why did that go over there? I don't want it over there. Zoom, go away. Okay, you can make a curl request. Let's say, for example, I wanted to go to HTTPS. Let's try bbc.co.uk. Let's see what happens. Whoa, look at all that stuff. This is the entire page from the bbc.co.uk that I have just received. I make a request to it. So I could technically, you can see here it's an HTML page at the top. If I wanted to try, I could just grab all of this data, load up in a browser and see what happens. It would just be a version of the BBC page. So by using curl, I can make requests to servers and I get back responses. So let's do this, but with my API. So let's do the same thing. API. Let's do it for city name. Let's try London. And I don't really care about that. App ID. And then my API key, which is, nope, it wasn't. I thought that was on my clipboard. It's clearly not on my clipboard. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Over here. Okay, so this is a request, and let's see what we get. A failed request. Let's double check that I've done this properly. Go back and look at the documentation. Q equals city name. Let's double check the city name, state code, and country code. Do I need all three of them divided by comma? Maybe I do. By city name. Let's have a look at an example. Do we have London? Q equals London with a capital L. Maybe that's important. Look at that. No matches found. Okay, well, that's not very useful for me at the moment. All right, cool. All right, use quotation marks. Easy. So I looked at no matches found. I clearly wasn't recognizing this as a URL, so I just wanted to force it. Most times you don't have to, like I did with the BBC. So I imagine because I use extra characters in the URL, when curl tried to understand what it was, it had no idea. So when in doubt, just use quotation marks for your URL. So this is my response back from the API. And let's grab this and format it more nicely. At the moment, it's a little bit unreadable, so I'm going to just copy it and have a look at what this looks like. Let's just add a file called data.dafter, data.json. I really recommend to install in your editor a formatter for JSON. So I have one installed called pretty.json. So you can just prettify it, so it just automatically reformats it to something that you can actually make sense of. And this is an example response, and you can see here that it's a nested set of sort of objects, a nested set of key value pairs. So I have the main outside sort of curly brackets, and then I have coord, weather, base, main, all these different things that I want to play around with. So this is an example of request and an example response for this API. So let's go back to what we're actually trying to do. Register for it, use it to write a feature test. So I kind of jumped ahead onto getting data from a request to the API. Just to demonstrate how to make a request to an API and see what it gives you. So this is my request to the API, and I'm going to keep that for the moment because I think that's going to be useful for me. Now, let's go back to the demo model and let's write a feature test for what I want to do. So this is something that I want you to do. I want to go back to here and have a look. This is what I want to do. So I need to visit the index page and then see that the page includes this text. So we should be able to do something like index.html, visit that page, Then I want to make sure that I see the temperature is, oh, I don't really know what it is. Let's say, for example, what does it come out in this example here? Where is it? Where the temperature was temperature was temperature. Temp, main temp, 281. That's above even Jamie's temperature, preferred temperature. Let's go back and understand exactly what unit that is.
It's Kelvin.
Units of
Kelvin, yeah.
measurement. Cool. Format standard is Kelvin, I imagine. Is that what you said? Temperature is Kelvin used by default. Yes. Cool. Okay. So, well, how do we convert from Kelvin? Kelvin
Minus 273.
to Celsius. Minus 273, someone said. Or 0.15. You missed 0.15. Sorry, Jamie. Okay. So what I want to do is assert that using this temperature data, what is 281.73 minus that? Oh, that's double negative. That's definitely not a temperature I want. Okay, let's say it's going to be round up 9 degrees. So that's my assertion. I'm using the data from here because every time I make a request, it might give me something slightly different. So I want to make an assertion that's fixed. So I made this request, and my spec is going to be the temperature is. I want to round that up to the nearest, or round down or round up, round it to an integer. So this is going to be the temperature is 9 degrees Celsius. If I wanted to fix it to, say, for example, 12 as indicated in, or 21, I would manipulate it in my fixture first. But we'll talk about that in a second. So that's what I want to see based on sort of like this sort of JSON that I have. That's what I want to see. So let's see that fail first. Oh, clearly I need a, it shows me the current temperature. Cool, I shouldn't find it because I haven't written anything yet. We'll try and retry a few times, waiting for it, but it never appears on the page. Cool. Okay, so I have a failing test. I'm all ready to start implementing it. Let's go back to the requirements first, double check. I've done this part, I've written my feature test, and now I need to, before I start implementing it, I have to create a fixture with data from a request to the API. So I've got the data from the request to the API. I need to create a fixture. So in order to do that, let's have a look at how Cypress does it. So a fixture is a way to make sure that you have, it's not the way to, but it's one part of making sure that when you run a test, remember when we talked about tests, one of the important rules of a test to make sure whenever you run it, it always does the same thing every single time. You have to control all parts of it. And clearly, when we make a request to an API, we don't control that part of it. It might return different responses. So as a result, we don't want to make requests to an API when we are writing tests. We want to control the response. And so we talk about stubbing the response. And there are a couple of different ways we can test it, but a common way at the moment for us is just to simply stub the response. So rather than use rather than allow the request to be made, we're going to say, don't make the request and stub the response. This part here. We can say, don't make this initial request to the data store to get information out, just intercept it and respond back with some data that we already have. So how does Cypress do this is the question. Cypress fixtures Let's have a look. It just says keep it in the fixtures folder. Cypress automatically scaffolds out a suggested folder structure for organizing your fixtures on every project. By default, it will create an example JSON in your fixtures folders. Cool. So really what I have to do is take this file, move it to this folder, fixtures. Let's rename it appropriately. Oh, not new file. Let's go something like weather data. Okay, so I've added that part. What else do I have to do? I have to use this method here to say make a GET request to a specific URL and provide a response. So let's do something like that. Yes, I was making a GET request. I want it to be anything to here. Let's say, yeah, that's fine. Whether that might be a specific endpoint, maybe it'd be better to do it something like that. Anything after double like that. Okay, so I'm going to say intercept any request I make to this URL. And the wildcard suggests you can sort of have any kind of extra part of the URL after this /. And I'm going to provide the response, not activities, but what I've said is weather data. So the point of this before each is to make sure I say any requests that get made to this URL don't actually make the request and provide the response that I've indicated in my fixtures folder for weather data.json. Okay. So let's double check here. I'm missing something. There's a compilation error. Missing. Look at that. It happens to everyone. Cool. Okay, that's where I should be. And still not being found. Okay, let's go back to the requirements of what I'm meant to be doing. Register done, use it to write, create a fixture done, use done, now make it pass. Yay. So as always, writing source code is the last thing to do. So I've set up my test and now I have to make it pass. So if I have a look at my index.html, all I have is some jQuery I've loaded to make sure that I can make requests. And I've got an element here where I'm going to update the HTML with my text. I link a script at the bottom here. So that's where I'll write my JavaScript. Okay, so let's start off with making sure the page is loaded. And what do I want to do in here? I want to make a request and then update the element with the temperature. So in order to update the element, I need to get the element. Get the element. Anything else I need to do? Probably, but let's start there. Get the element, const app element is equal to document, and then get element by ID app. And then I want to make a request. Let's do something like get, and then where is it? Here. Make the request, and then what I want to do with the data, I want to update the element here. So let's move that part in here. Update the element with the temperature. So app element dot inner HTML is equal to, okay. And then in order to get at the data, if the data comes back like this, I have to get into the main property, into the temp property to get this value. That's what I want out of this at the moment. So this named argument refers to the response from this API call, data main temp, I think, was it? Main temp. And then I have to do minus a certain amount from it to 73.15. And then I need to round it. How do I round it? How does JavaScript do rounding? JavaScript round. Math.round. Great. Down and up. Easy. Math.round. I also need the extra information around it, so that's getting a bit unwieldy, but let's refactor it later. I need Celsius, and then the temp. What was the actual thing? The temperature is. Okay. I've got lost on my syntax highlighting. Why is that? Okay, sometimes it just stops. Okay, let's see where we get to. Let's run it. And how am I running it? I'm running it using HTTP server. Okay. Let's exit out of here. Yes. And I want to run my project so I can have a look at it. Do I want to run my project? Let's have a look at the test first. There's something here. It looks like. So clearly I've passed my test. Yay. Let's see whether I can fail my test by changing my fixture. So this should break my test if I change the data. This should show me that I'm using this JSON as the basis for my test, which is what I want. So I say something like up by 10 degrees, and then refresh this. You see on my page it says 19 degrees Celsius, which is good. And I failed my assertion, which is 9 degrees. So this is good. That's exactly what I want. So I'm not anymore making a request. I'm using my stubs request, like so. So let's run it locally. Just have a look at my fantastic front end application. ATP server. On localhost 8081. Boom. Now, did you see that if you refresh it, you have like the previous loading? You can just about see it. And that's because that's the time it takes for the browser to render the original HTML, then make the request, and then update the page. So that's the time it takes for that request to be made and come back from the browser to repaint. Sorry, you might have epilepsy. I'm joking. Okay. Anything else that we have to do? Let's go back to the requirements. Make a test pass. Boom. Easy. Okay. Pausing for questions and thoughts.
Should you make more than like one stub to test it? Just thinking like on different days, you're going to have different weather in the real world. So how do you check for temperature changes other than, I guess, doing what you've just done with the making it deliberately fail?
So your question is, how can we check?
Well, no, my question is, should there be more than one test? Like you've got one set of data there for your stub. Should you have more than one stub to check for different days or whatever? Or
So if we think about the application behavior here, all I care about is making sure I get data from the API, and then I present it on the page. So I want to be agnostic to what data I get back. If my application needs to do something different per day, then that would cause me to write different tests to make sure I represent that behavior. But if all I'm doing in my application is taking this data and then presenting it in a standard view for every day, I just need that test that does that. I might want to test, be able to see it in Celsius or Fahrenheit or add more information to this display, not just the temperature, and that would make me write more tests. But if it's just for the temperature, that's literally as simple as it is, unless there's any different behavior. Does that make sense? Yeah, are you sure? Cool. So think about it in terms of what is my application meant to be doing, and at the moment we're just transforming the JSON into something that the user can see. All the time, standard. Cool. Other thoughts or questions? That was a good question.
Yeah, is there ever a precedent to do it the other way, where you develop via the source file and then write the tests?
Say that again.
Does that ever happen? I know you bang on about writing tests and then doing the source code. Is there ever a precedent of doing it the other way?
Sorry, I'm still replaying in my mind what you just said. How did you phrase that?
Bang on about.
About what? Sorry.
Writing tests and then the source.
Bang on about writing tests. Okay. All right. Let me just pause here for a minute while I digest that. So Jamie, does it feel like I bang on about writing tests?
Yeah, I mean, it's highlighted every session. I feel like
Good.
It's ingrained into me.
Good. That's
Is there?
attention.
Do you ever do it the other way around?
Test first, not test after. Back to your question. What was your question?
Would you ever do it the other way around?
Which way?
Write the source files and then the tests.
What did I just say about test first, not test after? Would I ever do it? Write source code before writing test code. As an honest answer, spiking code is useful to understand, to inform my approach of what I need to do. So as always, this question is, do I have enough understanding to write my test? If so, write a test. If not, get more information. All right, and get more information means playing around, but not production code. I just want to play around, understand what I'm dealing with, what's the response looks like, maybe what my approach could be, and after I figure that out, then I write my first test, right, to codify what I've learned. So feel free to play and explore as much as you want, but when you come to submitting work or writing code for other people, for any kind of production environment, test first all the time. Now, one of the exceptions here is when you are, I don't know, yeah, sometimes in a startup at the beginning of, and speed is of the utmost priority. Then I will still use like high-level feature tests to drive development, but I probably won't do as many unit tests because unit tests are most likely to change. So when speed is of the utmost priority, and I can tell you now, none of your jobs will prioritize speed in this way. But in that scenario, yes, I would keep feature tests very light, but allow that as a framework for me to work, and then write code, where sort of time to market is incredibly important. But at some point, you need to switch from that sort of way of writing code because you create a lot of technical debt as a result. Technical debt is the idea that the way you're writing code causes you need to write more code or spend more time refactoring it because of the way you're writing it. And so you develop a backlog of bugs or refactors that you have to make at some point. And your time to release more features increases as complexity and the disorganization of your code base increases. And so you need to manage that. And so if you're not writing tests, you're increasing technical debt most likely to the point where it will probably become unmanageable, and which causes companies to do entire rewrites of parts of their code base because they have no idea how it works or there are lots of bugs. So yeah, interesting question, but yes, test first, test first, test first. You will stand out in any kind of job interview if you write test first. The majority of junior engineers, when they go to their first for their first job, don't write tests when they submit work during an interview. It's a clear differentiator between you and the rest of the job market for junior engineers.
I have a quick question about
Yeah.
your get method.
Yeah.
So just how would I phrase this? What would be the difference between using the .then method rather than using a callback function within the get method?
The difference none, really. So the get method returns a promise, which I'm then using to execute more work. Where a callback function gets executed. So there's a very slight difference, but in what everyone needs to know now, there is no difference between using a callback function and then using the promise then syntax. So TLDR, no difference.
Cool. Should we just use the .then method for the minute then?
Yeah, I don't mind. Choose which one. Why did I do it this way? I think this is just mostly habit. There was no particular reason.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other thoughts or questions? You're about to all start do this yourselves, so just have a quick check for yourself. Is there any information that you think you need before you pair up and do this yourselves?
Wondering about the way you did like the contains the temperature equals like 9 Celsius. How would you write it if you just want to check 9 degrees, like 9 is the value you get?
So say that again. You want to check that what?
So instead of like just creating a string, we actually want 9 degrees itself just to appear in the section and just test that. So it's like, would we put, like, how would we say like contains a variable that we've stated? Or
I think I understand where you're coming from. So remember, first of all, that when we make feature tests, we're not asserting on variables. We just want to assert what the user sees, what they interact with and what they see. So the concept of a variable is irrelevant to the user. They just see text on the page. I don't see any variables here. I just see text. So I want to assert that when I go to this page, I see the temperature is 10 degrees. Oh, no, look, 10 degrees Celsius. It's getting warmer, folks. Yay. So that's one part of it. If you wanted to assert just on this part here, you could try and keep it in a different element and then target that in your test, and do something like I mean, get whatever it is, how we want to write it, and then specifically the number. and you would, I don't know, probably something like get weather and then update your page to make sure that you would have a separate element for the weather.
Okay.
If you wanted to do it this way. It's a bit weird, but fine. All right, and so in your index.js, you would try and make sure you would update the rest of the HTML with the text, and you would update this part here with the number, so you could target that specifically, right? But that feels almost brittle in the way that you're almost testing the implementation, saying I need these two specific elements, rather than just asserting on the page that says the user sees this text. And where possible, we want to just test the behavior rather than the way that you get there. So if it was important as part of the application to make sure you had two specific elements on the page, then absolutely, test that. But otherwise, just think about it always from the point of view from the user. All they expect to see is this, regardless of how many elements there are.
All right.
In terms of unit tests, there are no unit tests for this because we haven't encapsulated any of our logic in units. So there might be a different approach here that might satisfy you, Marie, about trying to make sure that we're getting the right data or be more specific. But at the moment, we're just feature testing. We're not unit testing. Okay, good question. Any other thoughts or questions?
So what about when you've got like loads of stuff on the page?
Yeah.
That you're checking the entire page to see if you've got 10 degrees or whatever. And would there not be some conflicts there if you've got so much information on the page?
Yeah, in which case you need to do more scoping like this to get the right element.
Yeah, that's what I was doing anyway.
Yeah.
So I was doing that instead of like just targeting the whole page. But would you say it's preferable to just target the whole page?
Yeah, always be scoped. Try and be as scoped as you can. So you want to scope by like areas of the page and say like, I want this area of the page to look like this. If you want to target the whole page, then you need to maybe include more information about the whole page.
But didn't you just say that it was weird or something?
If you are trying to target, like in this string, like different parts of it, for me, this should all just be in one assertion or in one.
Oh, right,
okay.
right. Yeah.
So if you try and break this up into two different things, okay, I think I understand where you're coming from, where I said like in different elements. So you're entirely right, Lewis. Be as scoped as possible about how you're asserting, but don't break up that component, that part of the page into multiple things, because that's dissonant. You want to sort of say everything that here looks like this. Does that make sense?
Yes, thanks.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like that may have been confusing. Good question and a really good clarification, Lewis. Any other thoughts or questions? Okay, I'm going to assign you automatically and have a go yourselves.